It's what the thing that leveling does is that it is a sort of a structural way to get out of the task of taking a stand of our lives and our identities in light of being towards death, right? In light of being human individuals that whose life is going to come to a finite terminus in terms of the things that the existentialist values. What does the existentialist value? The here and now. That is all that the existentialist cares about in terms of a metaphysics, right? The here and now. So the existentialist would not have believed in sort of Platonic world of forms at all. So Nietzsche was not clearly, around, lived long enough to see modern consumer culture, but there were enough in his day. Certainly, mass journalism, the mass media, was the creation of the mass media through journalism, journalistic enterprises was taking shape. The printing press started to give rise to what today we would consider the tabloids. But certainly in Nietzsche's age, he saw the way in which the popular literature, the popularization of what was good to read. It was not the great tragic plays or any other, or going to a sort of Beethoven concert, but it became the sort of lowest common denominator of the easiest pleasure seeking. It was the equivalent of like a Michael Bay film or something, right? Where you would see the pleasure seeking principles being fulfilled in a mass scale because of the bottom line and sort of economic factors coming in. And Nietzsche thought that this was a great loss to the great, wonder and awe and mystery of human potential, the radical uniqueness, the radical potential for difference. So this is a politics of difference. Nietzsche was always awed and struck by the incredible ways in which we sort of willfully abdicate our incredible potential to sort of contribute radically different things, to experience differently, because we prefer the sort of biofeedback and comfort of sort of walking in lockstep and sort of experiencing the creature comforts of the technologies and the goods that exist around us. Now, today, the equivalent of this herd-like mentality takes place in consumer culture, right? We talked earlier about this. In the movie Fight Club, IKEA is a prime example. The thing about consumer culture, once again, is that it allows for a one-dimensional experience, going to a blockbuster film, to be experienced as if it were an individual pleasure or an individual experience. So you feel like you have a multi-dimensional and complex identity, one that likes movies and also dining out, or you may like you may feel like you're a connoisseur of ale houses or beers, or you feel as if you have individualized or personalized existence. But patterns of consumption are the sort of structural elements that hold you in control, so that you don't seem to have a real freedom. The thing about consumer culture, as with mass culture, is that it is an impediment to freedom. For the existentialist, mass culture, especially in the form of consumer culture, is an impediment to freedom. Okay? We'll talk about how it is that this takes place. So the reason why mass culture is an impediment to freedom in the deep, robust sense of the existentialist is that it produces the illusion of freedom. And here we need to make a differentiation between positive and negative freedom. So the existentialist is going to come in and say, look, up until now, the freedoms that consumer culture produces are what we would call positive freedom. Positive freedom is freedom to buy something, freedom to buy car A or car B or car C. freedom to choose between option A, option B, option C, whereas negative freedom is freedom from, right? Religious liberties, for example, freedom from persecution, freedom from. That in the thing about consumer culture is that it places an emphasis or creates the illusion that positive freedom is all the freedom that the human individual needs to be complete. And for the existentialist, that's not true. The freedom to choose between 50 different brands of toothpaste at Target does not equal genuine freedom or authentic self. The freedom to choose between a hybrid electric vehicle in a sporty sort of, mild pastel color, or a Honda CXS bike or a Ducati racing bike. The freedom to choose between as a reflection of your identity. And of course, the going assumption here is that our identities, the formation of ourselves, is what gives our lives meaning. That consuming identities, that positive freedom in terms of choices is just tantamount to consuming a ready-made identity, which gets us no closer to the project of assigning meaning to your life that's yours. That's not your own, on the existentialist view, that's not your own sort of meaning. Freedom to do something needs to be coupled with negative freedom. So what would that look like? Well, we don't have the freedom. Let's just use the example. Florida is really good because it's so hard to get around without a car. The buses, if you try to ride the buses around here, transportation is terrible. It's just not designed. The layout, right? You know this. If you're going to go to a Gulf Coast town center somewhere, you're likely not to be able to tell me which bus route, right, to take. So negative freedom would be like the freedom, right? We don't have the freedom to not buy a car or to not have a job, or we don't have these freedoms to not partake in certain patterns of consumptions. Our radical freedom in this sense, I'm not using it in this Sartrean term here, but our sort of robust sense of freedom is never a negative freedom. It's just the illusion that patterns of consumption, that the freedom to choose between A and B is indeed emanating from our true inner desires and our autonomy and our choices. We are free to choose. And the existentialist believes that this is just, once again, consuming an identity. Now, one of the things that's going to happen as a result of this is that this is going to be sort of largely unsatisfying. At the surface level, it feels really good, right? Getting a good laugh at, sort of a stupid movie or all the different things, free pizza, whatever it is, may make us feel really good temporarily, right? Going to ZombieCon or partaking in mass manufactured things can make us feel like we have been entertained, or that we have felt particularly good, or that we are in control. But what's going to happen is we're actually going to have to first and foremost split our identities, because in making choices between A and B, many times we have to fragment ourselves. When we go see a movie, we tend to say we're indulging our, we're indulging our sort of recreational, or it's Friday night, we've studied really hard for a midterm all week, and after finals week, you just want to go out and release and have fun, and you sort of bracket out, and hold in abeyance, you completely bracket out the studious or rational side of you, right? That you left that back in the dorm room or back at home, and now you're just going to go play and relax. And what starts to happen is you will have a real strong division between entertainment time, time to go watch a movie, right? How many of you are in between classes, if you have a 3-hour time, right? You run off to see a great little, independent film just in time to come back for the next class, or I'm not advocating for anyone to do any particular type of thing, but there's a sense that there's a very strict division through the use of calendars as well of playtime and work time. So the wholeness of our identity, the wholeness of who we are as a unique, complex, intricate being towards death, that whose life is a sort of work of art that includes complex questions and the reflection of experiences in complex ways, it starts to be sort of manufactured and pre-patterned and cut off in advance of it happening by virtues of the structures and limitations that are imposed upon us by the needs of mass culture, right? And the needs of mass culture is when you have a mass population, you have to be able to build institutions that regulate behavior at a mass scale, right? Education has to be a mass sort of enterprise, or it has to be able to speak to large numbers of people. But once again, we're forced to, unbeknownst to us, we're forced to sort of start to split ourselves without us realizing. We start to have to split ourselves in ways that we don't realize we are splitting ourselves by fragmenting or classifying our experience of time in very different ways. Now, one of the things that this is going to do, according to the existentialists, is that we may feel temporarily good, right? When you go to the mall, to Miramar Bell Tower, it's like Black Friday, and you get something on sale, and let's say it's on super sale, and you got an extra, and you had a coupon. You come out of there feeling pretty good, right? And if you're like me and come in and can't even shop, you have a meltdown and come out and need your students to help you pick out the simplest thing. But for the most part, you're going to come in and feel pretty good about your purchasing decision, and that lasts for a little while. Right? How long does that last? Usually a couple texts where you tell someone, I just got this great thing on sale. And so it's all interconnected. There's a party coming up and Saturday night, and you certainly can't wear the same thing that you wore to the last party, because then you would have it all, posted everywhere on Facebook that you're wearing the same outfit twice, or whatever it is, and you feel pretty good about that. That lasts for, the euphoria lasts for a little bit. That's why they call it retail therapy. And you have a sense that felt really good, and the more things that you acquire, you can start to feel even better when you start to own a lot of stuff, because it makes life easier in some sense. And at the surface level, you're going to feel deeply satisfied. Now, according to Nietzsche, individuals can live and die at this level. You could be if you ever saw The Remains of the Day, it's a wonderful film for this. You can live and die your entire life thinking it was a good world that provided the creature comforts of manufactured commodities in a way that you lived a comfortable creature existence. For the existentialist, that's all fine and good, but then you don't deserve a name on your gravestone, because the person that died was not a person, but a placeholder, was a somebody. It was a body, and it was somebody, but it was not your body. It was not you in the robust, there was no you-ness to that body. It was just some body, anybody, somebody, right? It was a generalized identity that ought not sort of merit the individualized personality of having become a self that is existentially unique to time, place, locale, contingency factors, the habits of your moods, your sensory apparatus, all the different things that make you you. And so you can live and die by this way, but that is not an authentic life. And that's what we mean by authentic, right? That there was a self that was not simply a manufactured personality, a business tycoon that just simply learned some good skills about business and by virtue of social convention did some great things. So it can work both ways. It's not just, we're not talking about somebody in terms of somebody that never becomes famous. You can become famous on this account and still be woefully inauthentic, right? This is a sort of Paris Hilton example. It's like, what is she famous for being famous, right? It's so you can live and die and feel as if you've done well, but you don't get to have a sort of a sense that you have died as an individual. You have simply died as a generalization of a time and a place. Now, for those that don't live and die this way, you can have many options, but there's two other main options. The other thing that tends to happen is you have, right, the opposite. You have the like real teenage angst, existentially kids that just know something's up, right? Maybe you were one of them. You're like, I don't know, but I'm suspicious. Everyone tells me everything's fine, but I don't know. This can't be happiness, or a nonconformist, or all the different things that we can look back in one's life and say, at an early age, I knew this did not make an authentic life. But for the most part, that's a really rare thing, right? It's a really, really rare thing. And generally speaking, the third option, according to Nietzsche, is that of the human individual that's sort of not laughing it up and living and dying in joy, but there's a quiet sort of, you're still there, you're enjoying it, but you're saying, I don't know about this. I'll laugh in a little bit. At the surface level, you're sort of enjoying things, but deep down, you are an internally conflicted, anxious, dissatisfied, depressed, self-doubting, or sort of goal-driven individual because you're masking it, you're fleeing, right? That always needs to consume more or to experience more to keep doubts or feelings of emptiness at bay, right? You're someone that, I'm not saying you particularly, but on this view, one would be somebody that's always seeking out peak experiences to fill the void, to have a sense of completion, that it felt good when you bought that, but a couple weeks have gone by and now it's time to buy a new dress or a new watch or a new video game or something else. There's a sense of novelty, right? Novelty keeps things feeling as if one is indeed progressing because time is moving forward and rather than decaying in the face of the progression of time, right? So it's very important to understand that for Nietzsche, as for the existentialists, all of these, if not the great majority, are beneath the surface, okay? The rare exception is like the existentialist kid that just knows something is up. For the most part, this is something that's deeply beneath the surface. That you can continue to go to work and actually feel the emotion of happiness. You can feel happiness. You can go to the Estee Lauder counter and buy it in a bottle. Actually, I think that's Clinique. I can't remember. There's a perfume called Happiness. You can feel the emotion, the emotional charge of happiness, all the while still, right, having this puncturing or intermittent sort of punctuating moments that sometimes are medicalized as an experience, physiologically experienced as anxiety attacks, right? There's a sense of, I don't know where my life is going. I don't have a sense of direction. Everything I thought I had control over is actually not in my control. I have to keep my grades up or I won't get a scholarship. If I don't get a scholarship, I won't graduate. If I don't graduate, I won't have a job. If I don't have a job, I'm already living paycheck to paycheck. Where am I going to live? How am I going to pay rent? There's all these things that can yield and sort of the percolating of anxiety. And then we can bile that up through engaging once again in the cycle of consumption, right? Patterns of consumption, we can flee into the comforting pattern regularity of the choices that we know are going to yield a particular outcome. You just go decompress or go watch a movie or go out with friends or do all those kinds of activities. So on the existentialist view, um, all of these things take place beneath the surface. All right. Now, what this tells us is that on this view, there exists the illusion that we are little modern subjects, right? That we're unified, that we go to work, right? I feel like I'm a professor. I have a really strong sense of self. I have a vast, knowledge of the sort of, the structure of philosophy and the history of philosophy. I can perform my job well. I can do these kinds of things and feel like I'm a unified, stable self that has an identity, right? A professor, a sister, a friend, a gourmet cook, whatever you want to say. But for Nietzsche, that's all an illusion, a very comforting illusion. We see this when we get to American Beauty. This is really going to be the going theme here. But beneath this illusion is going to lie a postmodern subject, right? And one of the ways in which this postmodern subject arises is through feelings that have to be repressed or unarticulated, a sense of mayhem, a sense of feeling that we want to break free from these sort of repressive routines or common consumer values. When you get tired of the same routine, and this will happen, it doesn't happen at the common age of 20 through 23, because by that time you're still forming a sense of self in relation to the pattern regularity of the choices that have been made for you by your family. And so it seems that you may feel like a postmodern subject because you're partying all the time, sometimes getting high, not to be advocated by any way, shape, or form. But you feel as if you're, for the most part, just rolling with it, and no pun intended. I should really get on another subject here. So this notion that you're a sort of postmodern subject may seem to be fairly common to you, but then there will come a time in which you're going to get into the routine of a job, right? A job, you may already have that already, and it's going to stifle you, right? You're at work for the third straight shift, and you just have the urge to create some mischief or something. You're getting frustrated or have the feeling that, how did your life get to be this? There's got to be another option. How are these the options? There are options for life. Are these livable options? So we have the Tyler Durden quote that says, what do? You get a job, you go to work, you get married, have children, follow fashion, act normal, walk on the pavement, watch TV, obey the law, save for old age, and then with that notion that you are free. Under the existentialist view, freedom, right? The freedom to do all these things, to do A, B, C, under the illusion that you get a choice with each one, right? So how is getting a job positive freedom? Well, you quite literally choose between jobs. I mean, relatively speaking, in terms of if you're an employee, you tend to say, I take the first things I can get. But you choose to apply to job, 332 on the list of classified ads rather than another job, right? You don't apply for a dog walker or dog sitter, but you apply for a server position. It's freedom too. Then you choose to get up and work at a certain place, but not others. You choose the person that you get married to, right? And now we may think, well, we choose not to have children, or some may say, well, that's not sometimes just something that happens. But we still choose to give them certain identities, but not others. We give them certain values, but not others. We perform certain actions. We decide to raise them or not raise them, to give them up for adoption or not. We still have those. We certainly make choices in fashion. We do all these things. And for Nietzsche, this is going to create a real crisis in meaning, because this the freedom too, right? Positive freedom, once again, does not necessarily yield freedom, because those choices are sort of pre-patterned and manufactured for us, for anybody, somebody. It's a place to be somebody, sort of IKEA-like world. And so the first way in which we see this represented in Fight Club is the critique of modernity, right? We see first a critique of leveling to sameness. We see the narrator always saying everything is a copy of a copy. I'm going to use a different mouse next time. I apologize. Everything is a copy of a copy, right? This is a lamentable thing. That you can see it in the face of the narrator, that this is sort of deeply disquieting. Does he go to work? Does he have a respectable type of a job that has some degree of importance and responsibility where people's lives is at stake? Yeah, he's a recall coordinator, right? There's safety at stake. And there are all these things that, and then you see everybody wearing, sort of performing the same action, drinking the same lattes, wearing the same either a gray flannel suit or gray flannel skirt, or that everything is in relation to the same type of monotonous activity that is just mass leveling, right? Everyone is the same. We think we are special individual snowflakes, but really we're just partaking in the same types of acts and practices. And we think we're happy, right? We're like, we get on airplanes, we perform our duties, we go to conferences and give important talks, and the more we advance in our careers, the more responsibilities we have, the more titles behind our name, the fancier our wardrobe, the cleaner our haircut, the sort of cleaner and more dental work we have, the fancier our sort of manners or our knowledge of food or hot cuisine, our ability to discriminate between preferences of certain types of steaks, the rareness to our meat, how we like all of these things yield a sense of happiness. But of course, one of the things that that the character of Tyler Durden over here is that beneath the mask of happiness, there is a sick desperation in one's laugh. Something beneath the stable structure of happiness, of a life well lived, there are masks and underlying anxiety, of which one may be unaware. One of the ways that one remains unaware is that it is rationalized. Okay, so let me walk you through this because this is important. One of the ways in which our sort of anxieties are rationalized is through the medicalization. Okay, what does that mean? Medicalization is just when you rationally give a medical cause to something. And by all means, what we're not saying these things are not in any way not real. That's not at all what this concept tries to unpack. But there's just that it is an option to be able to rationalize one's existential experiences through official, rational medical. One of the things that rationally explaining a cause to a medical origin is it provides a rational cause for an experienced effect. Right? That's what it does. Now remember, in the film, the narrator goes to the doctor because he can't what? He can't sleep. He has insomnia. He's got a type of, there's a bubbling anxiety about his life that he's not, kid ain't happy. He can't sleep. He's exhausted. And this is rationally accounted for as insomnia. Okay, now this is not the same thing as saying insomnia is not real or that there's not a biological etiology that is neurologically traceable. This is not at all the same concept, right? This is just simply to say that on the existentialist argument, one of the ways, a very important way of explaining away or undermining existential sort of task of freedom is achieving sort of an authentic self, is to rationalize experiences of being otherwise, right? Through their medicalization. Why? Once again, because medicalization attributes a rational cause to your experience of an effect, right? You can't sleep, well, because you have insomnia, or because of you have a just generalized anxiety disorder, or social anxiety, or you can go through the whole DSM-4 now, and now you have internet anxiety. There's all these different medicalized and rationalized disorders. Okay, so early on we see the critique of modernity. We also see a critique of modernity in terms of the rejection of the mass leveling of culture. One of the things about mass leveling is that we feel the same sort of emotions. You're thinking, how is this the case? Well, in the 20th century, with the rise of mass culture and the film industry, something really disturbing was created, the laugh track, right? The laugh track is really disturbing because it actually tells you what to feel when, right? Not that you do. I'm not saying that or on the existentialist view, one would not be saying that you actually feel that, but that the experience of when to laugh on cue, the whole notion of laughing on cue, that which things are appropriate to laugh at and when, or that one should laugh at certain things, is sort of a product of mass consumer culture. And so one of the ways in which mass culture covers over the irrational aspects of modern mass culture, the fact that it's actually not responding to our individual needs of living well, right? That more technology is not necessarily making our lives better, or that having all 20 choices and having 20, theater stadiums doesn't mean that there's going to be one damn good movie playing, right? Have you ever gone to the movies, like 20 different screens, and you think it's all the same, Michael, but you can tell I don't like Michael Bay films. It's all the same, right? It's essentially different aspects of the same thing. There's a sense of leveling, mass leveling. And one of the things about modern culture and consumer culture is that it attempts to create consumer choices and consumer freedom to make things look really, really rational, and as if we are indeed advancing into a rational world that's delivering on all the original promises of the Enlightenment, right? That we would be in a better, faster, sort of more just and humane world. This is a sort of Buzz Lightyear philosophy, right? To infinity and beyond. That things are getting better and better all the time, and that in such a world, the goal is to be free from pain, to be free from, we want to have a good job so that we want to get a degree so we can get a good job, so we can have a good salary, so that we can have, right, buy creature comforts, or live such a life that is free from what? Free from want, free from a sense of a pain, or a sense of need, or a sense that there is something lacking, any type of pain. Mass culture rejects the phenomenon of pain or suffering as having any worthwhile role whatsoever. This is going to be really, really problematic, because what do we know about pain? That there's really important human emotions and dimensions of human experience, that if you are to live, to truly live, to have, say, I have known them all, known all the experiences as a being, that you will have to fling yourself to the mercy of forces like what? Like love. And the burn of the sting of love, that a sword can hang over the head of your beloved, and one day you may lose the person you love most dearly, and yet in spite of that, we choose to love them nonetheless. Now that's a sort of something that human beings in their concrete existence can do. So here, for instance, there's something really interesting, is that in the chemical burn scene, if you actually take a close look at the scene of the burn, it's the notion of lips, used to signify Marla's lips, of course, right? Human love, somebody that that the thing about Marla Singer is that she may be in the same quest as a narrator, right, to deaden pain or to feel something of a particular type, but the thing about Marla is that she's pretty straightforward and authentic, right? She knows that she's sort of in this quest to feel something. She embraces the pain of existence in a way that the narrator currently can't do. So the narrator here tries so many different things to first to feel something. Okay, excuse me. First to feel something. He attempts to feel first by going to these support groups, right, for testicular cancer, or just cancer groups, because he's saying, I'm trying to feel something. And modern mass culture has leveled me to the point where all I feel are the emotions that I think to feel, that seem rational to feel. But what you want is not just freedom to, but freedom from, right? You want a richer dimension, a richer sort of background context of possible emotions that you can take a stand on. So he tries that, and then quite literally just acid burn, a chemical burn in one's hand in order to feel. The deadening of pain is revolted upon, right? When he goes and beats himself up in order to take a stand against his boss. So these are symbolisms of the rejection of mass leveling in culture. Okay, the next Nietzschean concept. Now, according to Nietzsche, this is one of his most famous images or notions. So in Nietzsche's book, The Birth of Tragedy, it was his first book, Nietzsche coins the terms Apollonian and Dionysian to designate two central principles in Greek culture, right, that he believed could sort of help us give voice to our sense of being alienated or cut off from ourselves in modern life. So the narrator in Fight Club does not feel like he is himself or feels like he has sort of become who he is. He's cut off or alienated in modern life. Now, the ancient Greeks, according to Nietzsche, were onto this idea. Even though it was ancient Greece, they, and this is before Plato, when he talks about this is before Plato and Aristotle, that they were already they were already aware that just because you have a society, that the individual can sort of fall prey to the prevailing attitudes, values, and beliefs in such a way that is detrimental to the well-being of the individual in relation to culture. So one of the things they did is they created these sort of two principles, two central principles to symbolize this struggle between the individual and culture, to where the individual could always be seen as a complex individual that is not fragmented, but is rather a whole and complex individual. So these two figures represented, or the terms come from the Greek gods of Apollo and Dionysus. Now, Apollo is the sun god. Apollo's over here. Apollo is the sun god, and he represents the rational part of us, right? He's the basis for reason or rational analytic judgments, anything that gives structure and semblance, any type of logic, mathematical structure, physical properties, anything that is form-giving, that gives order to our experiences. Anything that gives order to our experiences comes from the Apollonian, okay? Now, the Dionysian is directly opposed to this. It comes from the Greek god Dionysus, right? God of wine, sex, hot bodily fluids. Yes, they had a god for all this. Music. This is Dionysus. And later on, he becomes Bacchus. So, Dionysus is directly opposed to the Apollonian. It represents sort of creative, sort of unfettered, unpredictable, all these bodily forces that can't be reduced to logical reasoning, right? those feelings that sometimes swell in this ecstatic and primordial feelings that you can't explain. Um, all of those things, anything that can't be reduced to logical reasoning, right, are come from the Dionysian. But for the Greeks, they were an essential part of an individual's emotional life. Okay, this is really important. This sense of Dionysian, all of these things that cannot be reduced, they can never be reduced to a rational, logical principle, were a deeply important part of an individual's life. Uh, and so the best example is good music or drunken revelry, right? Any good drunken revelry, not manufactured drunkenness, right? The experience of collective drunkenness in a manufactured way is not what he's talking about. But, sharing good wine with your friends on a beach in the dark or maybe around the bonfire, with feelings of mutuality and trust and just great drunkenness, with an appreciation for the wines that made for appreciation for the grapes that made the wine, and that'd be an example of drunken revelry, or just a little bit of chaos too. These two forces have to be present in the individual, right? In order for the individual to be a well-integrated whole individual. All right, once again, this is crucial. According to Nietzsche, the Apollonian and the Dionysian are mutually interdependent. They need each other, okay? They have to coexist within the individual. That's the way, that's sort of the original position, right? They coexist within the individual. By the way, Freud, this later becomes the ego and the id, that you may have a conscious, rational thoughts, but wait till nighttime, and whether you remember them or not in dream life, right? You will have sort of irrational drives and desires, or Freud himself will say how deeply influenced he was by Nietzsche. But this notion that you need these two forces, that they're supposed to coexist within the individual, is crucial. A human existence that does not have, right, the balanced proportion of both is going to be a sort of sick individual. And sick not being evaluated as somebody who is going to experience, and it's going to experience some sort of effect as a result of this imbalance. Now, it's only in modern life, according to Nietzsche, and of course today we would call modern life as mass consumer culture, it's only in modern life that these two forces are cut off diametrically from each other, and which results in the fragmentation of the individual, right? The loss of wholeness or integratedness. So once again, it's only in modern mass culture, modernity, right? The critique of modernity. This is why Nietzsche critiques it. He says, look, he's like, I'm not saying that technology is bad or that science is bad, that logic is bad, the same way that, getting drunk in itself would not be. What happens about modernity that's terrible for Nietzsche is that it cuts off and presents these possibilities as diametric opposites, right? That we have to cut or fragment or segment ourselves off as viable options in modern life. And so, according to Nietzsche, so once again, these forces have to coexist within the individual for the individual to be a healthy, well-integrated self that's capable of both, right? Now, according to Nietzsche, when one force dominates, right, there is an imbalance. And the result, and make a note of this, is a crisis of personal identity. If you have too much Apollo in you, right, you're going to be in the library 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. At some point, you're not just going to go out and get drunk. You're going to go and get mad drunk and end up in jail, right? Not to say that one will, but it creates the condition. For Nietzsche, it would create the conditions under which the extreme opposite, as a way to restore balance, as a kind of formative physiological drive will occur. So when one dominates, by the same token, y'all may understand this one better, if all you do is go out and get drunk, right, over at Uptown Larry's or wherever it is one is partaking in manufactured drunkenness these days, um, if that is all you do, there comes a point in which you say, I can't, I can't do it. I can't do it tonight. I physically, I can't do it. And you never want to see alcohol again on some days, right? When there's too much of those, that imbalance, sometimes you will have a sort of unhealthy response to it that is not on the Greek view as well, the ancient view, a well-integrated, healthy, and dynamic individual that's capable of both, that's capable of being able to enjoy, to go to the Senate and make some laws in light of understanding that human emotions also involve senses, a bit of irrationalism, and not wanting to be dictatorial over human life in law-like fashion, but to create the kinds of laws that are reflective of the complexity of human beings, where that's a challenge.